Hello everyone and welcome to Cappuccino with HR. My name is Rudi Bauer and after 40 years in business I'm 100% sure that the success of companies is directly related to the passion of the people working for these companies. With the Cappuccino of HR we created a format where we really invite people, it's HR leaders, it's recruiters, it's talent acquisition guys, and we're talking about all the different kind of topics, and the range is going from AI of course to new work, to leadership, and all the challenges along the way. Hello and welcome to another episode of Cappuccino with HR. And today I'm having a really nice topic and a really nice guest. It's Cole Groom, the co-founder of Breathing, and already the company name says that we are talking about something really different today. It's not AI, it's probably not a kind of new work, probably it's new work, but I think it's a kind of a really nice topic. What we see in all our studies and surveys that we're doing on a regular basis with our community is that well-being becomes a really topic that I think the issue of getting exhausted is a really big topic. And as we are moving into the digital world, I think it is a kind of a topic which needs to be addressed by companies. So Cole, thank you very much for taking your time. Welcome to Cappuccino with HR. May I ask you to briefly introduce yourself?
I'm Cole. I'm the co-founder of Breathing. And so I am actually originally from the US. So I moved to Europe about 11 years ago, where I've been working in various tech-related fields, where it got to the point that I was actually experiencing a lot of anxiety and really on the verge of burnout, and was looking for a solution that just to help myself. And that's when I came to breathwork and to meditation, a practice that I've been going into on my own for the last 7-8 years. And then in the last couple of years, with balanced breathing, kind of finding a way that we wanted to share this with more people, especially in the corporate context, of how we can take a greater attention to mental health, and give people practical tips on how they can feel better, work better, and just perform at their best. So that's a little bit of what drives me. What I'm passionate about is helping people feel their best and feel good, because it was something that I know I struggled with a lot, and this was something that became a solution for me, and I hope other people can also find some of the benefits of it as well.
Amazing, and amazing the openness that you're really talking about yourself and you recognized it yourself. So we will come to that a little bit later, but I have to ask these questions because I'm asking this question to everyone as it's called Cappuccino with HR. What is your favorite coffee?
Well, being from US, I always grew up just drinking like drip filter coffee always, and then moving to Europe, of course, there's much more of a culture of good coffee and drinking espresso, so I've transitioned over to be much more of a cappuccino drinker, actually. I'm one of the firm believers of that coffee tastes a lot better with cow's milk than oat milk than you see with a lot of the trend recently, so I take a cappuccino with cow's milk always.
Regular. That's the classical one, but stable in quality all over the place. Yeah, that's really true. That's really true. As you mentioned, you have been suffering from probably kind of a burnout symptoms. How did you recognize it for yourself, and how far do you think are companies in taking it serious? Because I think it's a serious issue. I mean, there's probably much more people out there suffering from that kind of symptoms, and what is your take on? Has it arrived in the mindsets of organizations? Has it got the space that it needs to have? And what was your personal experience when you were suffering from it or started suffering from it?
So for me, it's interesting because it actually started more from a trigger in my personal life and then bled into my professional life rather than vice versa. So for me, it was a struggle with anxiety. And so I was having a lot of anxiety to the point of having panic attacks. And it was something that was triggered a lot more by social situations. But then with things like anxiety, it's kind of a ball that starts to roll down the hill. And if you don't really do something about it early on, it's something that continues to grow and to start to affect you in different ways. So something that started in more of this social anxiety affecting my personal life, going over to starting to impact my personal life, and creating a lot of stress in situations, especially when, like, I was working in sales. So I would have to do a lot of big presentations, big meetings, meeting with clients in person, and my anxiety would get triggered by these situations as well. And it got to the point of where, it really, you don't feel in control of your life anymore. And it starts to affect how you behave. It starts to affect, do you really think ahead about situations of like, oh, how can I get out of this? Or how can I make this more comfortable for myself? Rather than being able to just embrace life for what it fully is. You're always living kind of in this space of fear. And so it got to a breaking point, essentially, where it's like, I can't deal with this anymore. I want to take control back of how I feel and what I do in my life. And that was when I found meditation and breath work and started practicing, and within a couple of weeks was already able to feel the benefits. And then it just became something that I was able to stick with, of course, not easily, like overnight. Oh yes, I just start doing this every day and everything gets better. It's a journey. It's a process of integrating it into your life and being able to realize those benefits. But so that's kind of how it came to be for me. But when you think about it in the more organizational context, in the context of just kind of business overall right now, you do start to see a much more focus on mental health and having a way to support employees through burnout. I think companies are getting the attention to it because it's starting to have a really big financial burden on companies with the high rates of burnout, with around 20% of employees in organizations experiencing burnout symptoms, and especially in Europe, where there's a lot of protection for employees, which is really good. When they start to experience these burnout symptoms, that's what gets companies to pay attention, right? It's always the bottom line. It's always money that makes things important, which is, of course, a bit of a shame. But in this case, it is so directly related to that financial side of things that it becomes impossible to ignore. And so that is where I see a trend of companies taking a lot more care around what can we do to support our employees, so that we show that we, one, care about employees and we care about mental health, and then what are the ways that we can actually start to reverse this trend of an increase in stress and an increase in burnout, and make sure that at our organization we're not part of that statistic. And that's what I see a lot of HR people thinking about and being more proactive and talking about, at least in the kind of context that I work with organizations.
What would you say, Cole, could be early signs to really see that extremely quickly? Because I think at the end of the day, if it's already a burnout, I mean, it's really has an extremely high impact on the costs for companies, because people are then probably unavailable for months or years. I mean, really long periods of time. What do you think could be early signs that could be recognized by leadership, HR, and the employees themselves? Because it's all a self-responsibility at the end of the day as well. And how could you provide this kind of secure space that you need to really have these early discussions? Because I think people are still ashamed to talk about it if they feel this kind of, probably in a personal environment, you feel it first. You don't feel well during weekends, you are stressed, you have this kind of panic attacks. What is necessary to really get that right from the very beginning?
Yeah, I think it's not an easy one, right? I think the people that are the most able to make these early identification signs are direct managers, because you have the most contact with your team. And those early signs, at least just from what I've observed a lot from people that I worked with at different organizations, I think one of the first things is this disengagement. And a lot of times even perceived as, on the surface level, more like low performance almost. So you start to think like, oh, well, what's up with this person? We're not seeing that same quality of work. We're not seeing that same level of output. And a lot of people, I see managers reacting to that in a way of like, oh, well, how can I help them improve their performance, right? Oh, there must be a struggle that they're having with work. How do I enable them in the working context so that they can work better? But really, that can just be a symptom of a more personal circumstance that's going on, right? Burnout is something that is so affected by so many different contexts. It's not something that you can only look at the work environment, because maybe it's also triggered by something outside of the work environment. And so fixing something in a working context, maybe that's not the solution to helping somebody that is really struggling in that particular area. So I think looking for that kind of disengagement of employees and seeing that drop down in performance, or also just seeing people being more flustered, being more overwhelmed, being, as a manager, that is really where you see the power of being an empathetic leader, that you can create a team of people that really care about each other, and that ask the questions, and that are really able to create the space within the team to have that safety to share. Because that's also kind of what you were mentioning. And I think that that's a really big factor into it as well, is, do you feel safe to say something when you're experiencing an issue? And that fear of what is the consequence of sharing how you feel, or how is it going to be reacted to, or what's going to be the consequences of making that first statement of, hey, I'm not doing so well right now. That can prevent people from sharing in the first place, and then you're not going to be able to have those early warning signs if people don't feel safe to even give you an indication, because otherwise you're just guessing. And people's lives are complicated. There's so many factors. So I think it's not so easy to pinpoint like, oh, yes, you're going to look for this and you're going to find early symptoms of burnout. I think it's about creating the space of support within your team so that people are willing to share. And once they're able to share, that you can actually do something to remedy it, which again also isn't always simple and straightforward, but at least it gives you a starting point to begin that conversation and take it on at a personal level with each individual and how they're experiencing those symptoms.
Cool. As we are still in a kind of a world, and probably it will never change, because I think at the end of the day it makes a lot of sense as well to give employees this kind of part-time flexibility to be in home office and probably show up in the office 2 days a week, or probably less than 2 days a week. This is, I mean, to recognize that somebody is suffering or is running into this burnout danger is more tricky and difficult if you meet the people just once a week than instead of 5 days a week, because probably if you meet the people regularly in the office as a manager, it's easier to see this kind of change and direction. How could we then provide this kind of possibility of really having the chance to recognize it as a manager? Because people are not talking about it because they probably feel ashamed. We don't have the secure space, and we see the people, probably some organizations are still full remote. So if people hide themselves in their homes, I mean, it's nearly impossible to get this right as a manager, isn't it?
I know, at least from my experience of managers that I've had that made me feel safe, and also when I've been managing teams, like at least of trainings that I've gone through, and the way that I try to bring that safety to the team, is that you yourself have to be vulnerable as a leader. It's important that people also see that you share how you're feeling and when you're facing challenges, and you do that really in a way with the heart on your sleeve, and not to do it in a way that is complaining or to put extra stress or pressure onto people, but to share in a way so that it helps people to understand you in the place that you come from, and that creates that psychological safety and that space for people to also feel comfortable to share about themselves. And as a leader, also doing some of that vulnerable sharing also in a team context. So not only just one-on-one, but making sure that, it becomes a shared, I don't like to use the word responsibility, but that it is a shared community, let's say, within your team, of that people are comfortable to share with each other and also to support each other. Because while I say that it's on the manager of the person that can be the one to recognize those early signs, it's the collective of working in a team that can also really help to support each other and make people feel better, and even be more preventative of burnout, right? If you feel really connected to your organization, to the work that you're doing, to your team, and that you also feel safe, that is going to bring people to share more early so that the signs are a bit more identifiable, but also to, I would say, quell some of those burnout symptoms coming up, because a lot of that does come from not feeling connected to the work, not feeling fulfilled by it. And being fulfilled comes a lot with personal connection. Like, not everybody's work is always going to be super meaningful, and it might not be their exact passion, right? But that doesn't mean it doesn't have to be fulfilling. And that comes a lot from the context of the work that you do and the people that are around you, and the way that the organization sets up that culture of working together. So that's kind of where I see that opportunity to make a change, even if you're not seeing everybody all the time in the office. It's that first step by the leader to show that vulnerability and create the safe space.
There's a lot of discussions regarding well-being, regarding health mindset in organizations, but I have the impression, my personal impression is, it's still very reactive. So something needs to happen, that something happens then later on. So it's if companies really want to be more proactive there, what do you think could be easy initiatives or steps to really provide, on one hand, to launch the discussion, to launch this openness, because I think that's the necessary first step, and then later on to really probably have a kind of probably weekly, daily breathing workshops with the entire team, or I don't know what. Do you have any suggestions there how to implement it as a routine in the daily lives to move away from this reactive kind of ton of initiatives that are needed to solve the problem that's already there, or to avoid the problem to show up? Is there any kind of tips that you can give to the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think for organizations, it's a big challenge to tackle, and it's not an easy one, because you can even look at organizations that are doing this really well, right? Where they are being proactive. They have things like these employee assistance programs and these EAP platforms, right? Where it's like, oh, you have access to psychologists whenever you need it. You have access to all these resources, you know? The tools are there. But the challenge also comes of getting employees to engage with those tools and getting them to understand the importance of it, and that adoption of those resources is the other challenge to face. So one is making sure that there are the resources available for employees, but also engaging them with it in a way that is meaningful enough for them to take their own initiative to engage and to do something about it. So I think a lot of it comes from this culture side of things, which is one of the most ambiguous and difficult things to influence inside of an organization. But it starts with all people buying into an approach, buying into a mindset of how do we approach our work as a company, and then even maybe as a smaller team within that company. So that is where I see that it comes from, again, leadership taking that step to show that this is something that's important. It's not just the work that we're doing here, but we do need to care about each other as individuals that work in this organization. Then, of course, to be more proactive, right? I would love to sit here and say, yeah, if you just did a breathing workshop every day, people are going to show up and they're going to feel better. But of course, it's also not that simple. You want to plan these initiatives in a way that they still feel special for people to engage with them, right? If I were to host a workshop for a company every single day, people are not going to come, because they're always going to see like, oh, well, I've got one that I can join tomorrow, or oh, I'm always busy and so I don't go. But it's kind of positioning these moments that, hey, we're going to take the time out of our schedule. We know we're all busy, but once every other week, once a month, we're going to get together and we're going to do these exercises. I focus on breathwork because it's something that helped me personally. It's something that is relatively universal because, well, all of us breathe. It's a tool that's there with you always. And so what we focus on in our workshops is it's not just the idea of coming for the 30-minute or the 1-hour workshop once a month, and that is going to be the resolution of preventing burnout at your company. What we really focus on is giving people practical tools that they can take themselves and apply in their own context. And even more simply than saying, hey, you should be doing 5 minutes of breath work every day. That's already a big ask for people. What I try to preach is becoming more aware that these tools are there for you. Even if it's just taking 1 or 2 good deep breaths every day, that moment when you feel overwhelmed, just taking one really deep belly breath, and just taking a step back from that feeling that you might have had, to create that separation between your reactions and yourself, and being able to approach things from a more objective manner, from a more grounded manner, because our mind has the tendency to really easily run away from us. And that's what meditation and what breath work is all about. It is about creating that calm centeredness and being able to have a better control over your mind and recognize when it might be running away from yourself. So I think that the initiatives that companies plan should be intentional, should have a really big focus around it of like, hey, this is important. We're going to take time out to do this. We're not expecting you to do it all the time, but this is something that you can use, not just in that one moment where we're focusing on mental health for today, but something that you take away and you can apply to your own context, even if it's just 10 seconds, 20 seconds, a few minutes, but that you have those tools to do it yourself.
If you had a full support from leadership and budget wasn't a constraint, what would be your steps that should be implemented in every company from tomorrow on? Is there kind of an easy answer on it?
Yeah, I mean, funny, I thought about this one a bit before. Of course, from my own company's perspective, I would say, yeah, let's do breathing workshops every day. And that'll be great because more people will engage with it. They're going to be able to come in, take a deep breath, have these tools and have that consistent practice, because that is the power of that breath work can have, is that it's through this repeated practice. This once-a-month session is great to help people reduce that stress in that moment, but we focus on these practical takeaways so people can integrate it into their daily lives and overall just improve also their unconscious breathing. But I think one of the easiest things that you can do, and it's something that I try to do with a lot of the different people that we work with and we do within our own team at Balanced Breathing, is that actually just having that mindful moment before each meeting. So before we go into and start with the meeting, we say, hey guys, let's take a moment that we all together just take one deep breath. We arrive in the space. We all agree that we're here and we're going to focus on this conversation, this meeting, and then we go on to the next, because we're all so busy. We're all so flooded by communication. If I think about how many screens I have on my laptop, how many different communication platforms, I've got Slack, I've got WhatsApp, I have my email, I'm constantly checking everything and I'm switching around. And every time you get a message, it's changing that thinking. It's taking you back to, oh, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do next? And this is how, especially for people that are facing really high workloads, the spiral begins, right? Because you feel pulled in each direction, and it makes it hard to focus, which makes you less effective, as in productivity sense of the word, but also in your mind, that you start to feel this hecticness of the world that we live in, of this input from so many different sources. It starts to bleed into your way of thinking, and so that's just one really simple practical tip that we also do when we work with leaders at organizations about how do you start to create this culture of well-being. Just that one moment at the start of a meeting that you all take one deep breath and arrive there in that moment for that conversation. And that can already have a really big impact just in the effectiveness of meetings, but setting that standard and that culture as well.
I think that's a really good tip because it costs no money. It could be easily implemented as a routine, and I think it could be taken directly from here and being implemented immediately. It's a really good one. What I want to announce, and that probably brings me to my last ask for you or request to you. You are at our HR Leader Summit in July. So at the World Congress in Berlin from 9 to 11th of July, there's a kind of attached HR Leader Summit. And the wonderful thing that we have arranged with you is we will have some, from time to time, we will have some breathing sessions with you. And I'm really looking forward to that because I think every conference is stress in itself as well. People are rushing around, meeting a lot of people, having hells of tons of conversations. So no really silence and quiet moments. And I think the breathing workshops are then probably the ideal space to calm down and get this kind of silence in ourselves again. And what I would ask you to, as I have you here now, probably we haven't spoken about that before, but could you show us and me and the audience a kind of a quick one, which we could probably do? So a kind of a shortcut of one of the breathing sessions. Could we
Yeah,
do that?
yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing to think about, I'll teach kind of two components here. One is, well, how do you take a good breath? What is the principle of good breathing? So one of the things that you want to focus on is breathing through your nose rather than through your mouth. This is something that you can already integrate throughout your day to your normal breathing. So for a lot of the practices that we teach, it's about nasal breathing rather than breathing through your mouth. The second is going to be that it's starting to activate your diaphragm. So most of us, we're sitting at the desk all day and it's really hard to sit up straight and have good posture. So we sit hunched over and we want to see our screens. So we get really close. But this kind of closing off of the body and hunching of the back, it closes off the diaphragm. And what that causes us to do is to breathe more in the upper part of the chest. And so you take these short, shallow breaths. And so this one, you don't utilize the lower parts of your lungs where you actually have a much better exchange of oxygen and CO2 in the blood. So that is one component of it. And then the second is that you're also breathing much faster. So one component of actually putting the body into a relaxed state is breathing more slowly. If any of our listeners, are familiar just with anxiety or this stress response, what happens is the body gets tense and you start to breathe fast, especially with anxiety. And when you start to have a panic attack, it's really this getting really close to a hyperventilation pattern. And so by slowing down the breath, we naturally cue the body. It's how you actually tap into the nervous system and you trigger this parasympathetic response, this rest and digest response in the body. So that is why before we teach any exercises, it's about just activating this diaphragmatic, slow belly breathing. And kind of so what this means is that one thing you can do is even just place a hand on your belly to kind of get this physical feedback and see as you're inhaling, how much can I fill up and expand my stomach? And as you exhale, feeling it contract back towards the spine. So it's about creating this movement of the diaphragm, really activating it into our breath, which we find, and also through a lot of research, they show that people are not always doing this diaphragmatic breathing. A lot of people are mostly thoracic breathing, having this short chest breathing, the majority of people actually. So that's the first principle that we always focus on in any of our workshops. So if you want to try it, you can even just put one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly, and then just take a couple breaths through the nose and feel where the breath starts to enter into your body, just through that physical feedback. And as you take a couple of breaths, just start to see how can you shift that breathing more into your belly? How can you push out and expand, kind of drawing down, pushing out the stomach? And as you exhale, also feeling that diaphragm falling back towards and contracting into the spine. And through just doing a few rounds of that, just a couple deep breaths can already have a really big impact. So that's the first principle. The second one, if people want to take it a step further, one of my favorites is what is called more traditionally Anulom Pranayam, which is a sequence of 4-8-8 breathing. So it's where you inhale for 4 counts, you hold your breath at the top for 8 counts, and then you do a slow extended exhale for 8 counts. And so this is also a very easy way to kind of trigger this response in the body. So again, if you just kind of use your hands again to take a deep inhale into the belly, 2, 3, 4, then you can just hold it at the top for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then release, just a slow, controlled exhalation all the way down to the bottom for 5, 6, 7, 8. And even just two to three rounds of that is something really simple that you can do even at your desk without anybody noticing, something that I do often and that we teach to a lot of people.
Really cool. Cole, thank you so much for taking your time, for sharing having the openness to share your private story as well, because I think that's always the biggest step, and I think it gives people the feeling that they are not alone with these issues. And I'm really looking forward to have you in Berlin with us. There will be these breathing workshops, and there will also be a kind of a panel discussion, as far as I know, together with you. So I'm really looking forward to have you as a guest there. And thank you so much for your time. Thanks for this small sneak peek of what we can expect from the breathing workshops. And I was talking to a colleague today in the morning from our board level, and she said, please free up my agenda and block it in my agenda, because I definitely want to be there at these breathing workshops. So I think it's a great kind of nice additional thing that we can offer there. So I'm really looking forward to that. It was a pleasure having you with us. Dear audience, stay tuned for more episodes. And Cole, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much, Rudi. It was a good conversation.
Thank you.
Cheers. Looking forward to Berlin.
Thank you for watching Cappuccino with HR. If you enjoy this kind of conversations, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Then you get all this kind of upfront information, your upcoming episodes, and all my nice guests. Cappuccino with HR is brought to you by WeAreDevelopers, Europe's #1 developer community and a leading platform for connecting HR and companies together with developers. If you want to learn more, visit us on WeAreDevelopers.com. Thank you again for watching, and see you next time on Cappuccino with HR.